the U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania. Well, there's much in the newspaper this morning about Afghanistan, including some reporting out of the 3-hour strategy session that happened in the White House yesterday with President Obama and top advisors trying to figure out his next move in Afghanistan. From the reading, there are basically two camps that's being reported. The ones who support General McChrystal's proposal for increased troop levels and a counterinsurgency plan, and the so-called, I'll call it the Biden camp, which is looking more towards focusing with drones and intelligence on al-Qaeda and Taliban connections. Which camp are you in at this point?
I lean more towards the former. I was on the ground very early in that war when I headed the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, short mission. I came back 18 months later and saw how it had spiraled downward so drastically because we had gone into that tragic misadventure of Iraq. I therefore am supportive of the original reason we went in, which was to eradicate al-Qaeda. But there's no more al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. They are present in what General Hayden 2 years ago, head of the CIA, said is a safe haven from whence they can plan another 9/11 against us quietly, if they're not disturbed, over in Pakistan. So I will accept what the general wants to do if the goal is eradicate that safe haven in Pakistan by supporting Pakistan in doing it from a base, and that base is Afghanistan. And second, that there is a very well-defined exit strategy, not with a date that's certain for withdrawal, but with benchmarks for success and failure of how is this treasure we're pouring into that conflict giving us results that we can see, to leave behind the probability, not the certainty, but the probability that al-Qaeda will not move once they're eradicated in Pakistan back to Afghanistan as we redeploy. My position is put myself 5 years from now, and if we left al-Qaeda in a safe haven to plan against us, what would we say if they did strike us again in 9/11? And so with a proper exit strategy, and not trying to do nation building like we once did at the beginning of this conflict, but leaving behind certain conditions that there is stability as we redeploy, I can support a slight troop increase.
Let's go to phone calls as quickly as you can here. For Republicans, 202-737-0001. For Democrats, 202-737-0002. And our line for Independents, 202-628-0205. Again, in the reading of the papers this morning, there's emphasis from the Senate, Senator Carl Levin, saying that we need a much larger Afghan army much quicker. That's the bottom line. That's the winning strategy.
It might be the winning strategy a few years from now, but the Afghanistan army will take years to bring up to the level that would ever have an opportunity to deal with the damage that's already been done. Only U.S. troops can provide immediately the template of security where we begin to win the trust of the population towards us. To turn it over and rely upon the Afghanistan military to do it now, we will never get there. We've got to bring it up as we train them and let them take it over as we redeploy. But I have to say again, what we didn't have in Iraq, and this administration has not provided yet, is a requirement for an exit strategy, so we know what are the results of what we're doing. If the administration can't provide that, how do they know if their strategy is going to be successful? And that's the caveat I have that they must provide.
There are a host of stories, if you're interested in reading more, because of the 3-hour meeting at the White House yesterday. Many major newspapers have done some reporting. One of the more interesting this morning is Yochi Dreesen's in the Wall Street Journal. Gates doubts U.S.-Afghan strategy. As Obama reviews options, Defense Secretary worries manpower-intensive plan won't stop the Taliban.
Here's what I keep in mind. When I had to go into Afghanistan fairly early in that war for that short mission, I met with then head of the NSA, National Security Agency, the eavesdropping with the satellites, Mike Hayden, General Hayden. And what he said to me before I went in is, hey, Joe, you know, General Franks, who was running the Army there, keeps telling me, give me some actionable intelligence we can act on. General Hayden said, I keep telling General Franks, give me some action, and I'll give you some intelligence. In short, if you don't have some boots on the ground that makes them move a little bit, makes them do something untoward where we can, with our technology or unmanned air vehicles, pick it up, then you're not going to be capable of finding the al-Qaeda where they are and eradicating them. So some troop movements are necessary, but not the heft like we had in Iraq.
Continues to be a number of articles trying to understand the impact of the Afghan vote and what kind of stability we would find from the leadership there. Can you add your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think you'll find minimum leadership coming from the capital. This is one where at one time we told the Taliban, remove al-Qaeda and we won't invade Afghanistan. Well, now we can accept that some of the Taliban may remain, and warlords and local provincial leaders are probably the ones that provide the stability. This is not like when the Russians went into Afghanistan. When they went in, they murdered, often drunk, 1 million Afghanis, dislocated 4 million from their homes, and it gave rise to an insurrection of 250,000. At most, there's probably 20,000 Taliban, and most of them, 70%, are there really for a wage, a job. 30%, about 6,000, are the ones that are very radical. We can deal with this as long as we know with measurements how well we're progressing. Otherwise, we fall back to Plan B, which is by and large a containment strategy, which may not work as well.
Carol Troll asked by Twitter, Representative Sestak, do you agree with your colleagues, Representative Hastings, that Congress is not educated on the language and factions in Afghanistan in order to make an assessment?
Congress people have a tough job, but yes, I think that people who are truly having their most important duty being one of helping to support troops overseas, declaring war, that's what we do in Congress, should be a bit more imbued in some of the terminology. During the debate on Iraq, I guess I was surprised at times where certain individuals would say, well, we can be out of Iraq in 4 months. As you can see in the redeployment plan, one of the most difficult things for military to do is to redeploy. And it can take now, as you well know, about a year and a half. So to have better sense of what the military can do, I think would obviously serve our nation well.
Let's get to calls, beginning with one from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is Mike, Republican line. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can our goals be achieved without eradication of the Taliban? Number two, can we defeat the Taliban without counterinsurgency and creation of a stable Afghanistani army and police structure? And three, does this not require a very long-term and comprehensive approach to the problem? I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It can be accomplished without eradication of the Taliban, but it can't be accomplished without the goal, if the goal is to eradicate al-Qaeda, which is a totally separate entity, although some of the Taliban have been al-Qaeda-ized, but that's the true goal. The issue with the Taliban is to try to ensure that those that would give haven in Afghanistan, if al-Qaeda came back, are isolated and removed. That's probably about, roughly, some estimates say 6,000. The other Taliban, we, unfortunately, but we can live with, because the treasure to put into Afghanistan to get it back up to a level where we once wanted nation building is just too much for the benefit that costs. So that truly is what we have to. And we do need to have the Afghanistan army and military to have some semblance of being able to provide stability throughout that country. But it's going to rely upon, I believe, warlords, tribal chiefs, and others who give local control and support. And that's what I believe is the right strategy.
Next question is Exeter, New Hampshire. Dan, Democrats line.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Representative. 2 points. How damaging was the first 8 years of this conflict being under-resourced and slow-walked, and that we find ourselves in this position? And second, if you're trying to deny al-Qaeda a training camp, you could take a football field size and put 15 guys in a broken airplane there, and you can have your training facility. How impossible is it to patrol every square mile of Afghanistan so a handful of terrorists won't get together and train? And,
absolutely. To your first question, one of the more daunting statements I think made was 2 years ago where the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, and I